So taking a look at number 46, it asks us to verify that tangent squared x minus cotangent squared x equals secant squared x minus cosecant squared x. Now my hint of picking the more complicated side, they're, to me, personally, equally complicated, so it doesn't really matter what side we start with. Let's just start with the left-hand side. Now my other hint is to use your end goal as a guide as to what to do. So since I'm starting on the left-hand side, the right-hand side is our goal. Now I know a lot of people like to do sines and cosines at the beginning, and that's totally fine. You can go ahead and do that route, but I want us to be a bit more efficient. So I noticed I'm starting with tangent squares and cotangent squares, and somehow I'm supposed to end up with secant squares and cosecant squares. Well, we have to remember, so this is my scratch work, my thinking. I know that there is a relationship between tangent squares and secant squares and cotangent squares and cosecant squares. Namely, I know the Pythagorean identities. I know that 1 plus tangent squared x equals secant squared x, and I know that cotangent squared x plus 1 equals cosecant squared x. So just by straight up using Pythagorean identities, I know for a fact that I can immediately transform the cotangents and tangents into secants and cosecants, which, is exactly what we want. So instead of doing sines and cosines, let's just go straight to these substitutions. So first is tangent squared. Well, according to Pythagorean identity, I'm going to have to take this guy here, manipulate him, subtract 1 from both sides. I know that tangent squared x is secant squared x minus 1. You just have to subtract the 1 over. So I can do that substitution. So that equals secant squared x minus 1 minus, I always like to use parentheses when I substitute, and according to this identity, I know that the cotangent squared by itself is equal to cosecant squared x minus 1. So do that substitution. Cosecant squared x minus 1, and then you just go ahead and distribute the minus. Secant squared x minus 1 minus cosecant squared x plus 1, and what do you know? The 1's will cancel out, giving us exactly what we want. That is precisely the right-hand side.